What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB, and more specifically, an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. Now, today, we're going to be putting the bow on top of the gift. We are going to be wrapping up our divisional breakdowns, talking about the NFC West, giving you everything you need to know about the division, about all of the Dynasty Fantasy Football assets in that division, players we think are going to trend up, trend down, breakout, bust, values, sleepers, everything, the whole 9 yards. You guys are going to get it here on today's episode. If you haven't watched the other episodes and you want to watch those after this one, I strongly suggest you do so. I also strongly suggest that you subscribe to this channel. But as I mentioned, it is not going to be an episode of Let's Talk Dynasty unless I bring my co-host into the building. So let's get him into the building today and let's start talking about the NFC West. War, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to do this. NFC West time. Let's go.
It is the final one. We have gotten through the divisional breakdowns.
We made it. We at the finish line.
Now, look, as I mentioned on the last one, we are recording these before I go on vacation to actually come do a draft with you there in Las Vegas, Nevada. On the last episode, we said something about, bear with us, grain of salt. Some news might hit in between the time we press record and the time that we release the video. And within moments, literally like a minute after we stopped recording the last episode where we talked about the Las Vegas Raiders, the Raiders announced their starting quarterback, Gardner Minshew. And on the last episode, you said Aiden O'Connell would be the starting quarterback. So I'll give you, 5 seconds if you want to just address that.
The battle was neck and neck anyway, and as you said in the last video, even if it starts off with Gardner Minshew, both of these guys are probably going to play some minutes at quarterback this season. So
fair enough. As I mentioned, we're recording these ahead of time, so bear with us. The analysis is still going to be legitimate. There's just going to be minor news pieces that break here and there. Now, hopefully, because today we are talking about the NFC West, the nuke, the big bomb of Brandon Aiyuk. He is in this division. We saved this division for last because Aiyuk has continued to drag this process out, but we cannot wait any longer. We have to talk about it today. And as we have done with all of these episodes, we will start from the lowest projected win total all the way to the highest projected win total.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the San Francisco 49ers first. We are talking about the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals, they are projected 6.5 wins last year. 4-13 was the record. They missed the playoffs in 2023, but some major additions to this team going into 2024. The big one, Marvin Harrison Jr., generational wide receiver talent, goes to the Arizona Cardinals. They also draft Trey Benson in the NFL draft, and maybe not so major, but also another addition to this offense. Zay Jones of the Jacksonville Jaguars signs with the Cardinals to play on the outside, giving us a wide receiver room of Marvin Harrison Jr., Zay Jones, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, Trey McBride. Should be a improved offense, I would think, in 2024, but 6.5 is the win total. How do we feel about this win total, and how do we think that the Cardinals are going to perform this year?
I think they'll do better than 6.5. I don't think they're a playoff team, but I do think that they are good enough to cause some issues for some other teams in the division. I could definitely see them winning 8 or 9 games, but they have to go out there and prove it. I think they have some very, very dynamic players on offense. So the offense is definitely going to have to carry that team, but I could see them beating that 6.5 win total.
Yeah, I feel like 6.5 is a little bit low for this team. I think this is going to be a good football team. They have some good coaching. They have good quarterback play, despite how you feel about Kyler Murray. I think he gives you some good quarterback play. Marvin Harrison Jr. should be very good. Trey McBride, second year with Kyler Murray throwing him the football, should be a little bit better. I think this is going to be a solid football team. Now, we talk about some of the ADPs and some of the players that you should be watching for your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. And keep in mind, this is Superflex Keep Trade Cut ADP, the players in the top 250. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. as the wide receiver 5 right now in Dynasty. He is a first-round startup pick. Kyler Murray is the QB 11. Trey McBride is the tight end 3. Trey Benson is the running back 17. That rounds out your top 100 in ADP. And then from 139, James Conner is the running back 32, Michael Wilson, wide receiver 67, and Greg Dortch makes the cut. 235 is the ADP, wide receiver 84. Looking at the ADP, looking at this team, couple talking points. One, I think we can start off with the Marvin Harrison Jr. conversation. It's a top 5 guy right now. Warranted?
Yes, absolutely. It is safe to roll him out and expect him to do very well for your fantasy roster. So yes, he is properly slotted.
No, nothing about it. Just that is the way it's going to be.
Nothing about it. He'll be a guy from day one.
I agree. I don't think that there's much. I mean, the target share should be there. The quarterback play is going to be there. The offense should be up tempo enough. Like, unlike, I will say, we went kind of hard on the Giants in our last week's episode. Mainly that was because of the quarterback play of Daniel Jones. It also was fresh in the mind. We watched him throw 2 interceptions. We went pretty hard on Malik Neighbors, and not the talent of Malik Neighbors, but the opportunity that was in front of him was not the opportunity that is in front of Marvin Harrison Jr. This is going to be a very good situation, unlike that Giant situation. I really do believe that we are looking at a wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. that, yes, he is being valued as a top 5 guy right now. We've talked about, the Amon-Ra St. Brown tier, the A.J. Brown tier of player that this guy is. I think this is exactly where Marvin's going to be, man. And I would not be shocked. It's very lofty expectations. I understand that. I would not be shocked if this time next year, we're talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. as a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb type of talent, a top 3 guy, top 4 guy in Dynasty.
I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised if that was the case. I'm already looking at him. I think we should look at Marvin Harrison the same way we looked at Jamar Chase from day one. And I think a lot of the reason that people don't is because people don't look at Kyler Murray. From the bring up one of your favorite arguments. The reason why people don't look at Marvin like that is because a lot of people don't look at Kyler Murray in the same ilk as they look at Joe Burrow. But the reality of the actual numbers would suggest that Kyler should probably definitely be looked at in the same ilk as Joe Burrow. So as far as fantasy, yes.
I was going to bring it up because, if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be successful, it will be because Kyler Murray is successful. And Kyler Murray right now, we saw it, the ADP was 11 at the time I made this graphics. I'm actually looking at it right now. He has been pushed down the board again to QB 12. So he is moving down as we speak in between the time I made the graphic. I think Jaden Daniels has surpassed him now, and that is why he moved down. We saw some preseason games out of Jaden Daniels, and now we're just going to keep pushing him up the board, I guess. With that said, there is no player. I've talked about it at length this offseason. I don't need to dive into it too deeply, but there is no player in Dynasty that I believe is a better value than Kyler Murray at the quarterback position. This is a guy who is going to give you, I have him as a top 5 quarterback in my redraft rankings this year. I think he is going to give you top 5 numbers. It is arguably, you can argue that he has not had a wide receiver as talented as Marvin Harrison Jr. probably ever in his career. And I know that's going to speak volumes, and that's going to offend a lot of people because he has played with Larry Fitzgerald. Keep in mind, Larry Fitzgerald was older when he played with Kyler Murray. Also, he has played with DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins was a damn good wide receiver. A very, very good wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr. projects to be on that same type of timeline, maybe even better. Lofty expectations. But Kyler Murray, undisputed best value in Dynasty Fantasy Football, in my opinion. And I don't need to dive too much deeper into that, but how do you feel about him being, QB 12, QB 11?
I feel like Kyler could produce near the top of the fantasy football league as far as in quarterbacks. I feel like he should be up there. People confuse their dislike with Kyler from fantasy football production. We need to get out of that. We need to strictly look at fantasy football production. And we're not talking about an argument like Justin Fields where it's like, okay, he's productive in fantasy football, but he could lose his job. Kyler is in no danger whatsoever of losing his job with the Arizona Cardinals. Him losing his job is just him going to be a starter for another team. You have nothing to worry about with Kyler Murray in that aspect. So he should be higher than QB 12. It should definitely not be putting Jaden ahead of him right now. If there's someone out there, anybody out there who I'm in the league with who wants to trade me Kyler plus for Jaden and I have him, I'm all here for it. I'm here for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. They have him in the same range as guys like Trevor Lawrence. If you want to give me Kyler for my Trevor Lawrence, I'm here for it. Let's make it happen. That being said, as I mentioned, I don't need to go too much into Kyler, but there's one more stat that I found this offseason that I love bringing up because I think it shows how productive Kyler Murray is. When you talk about the most fantasy points per game from the quarterback position of all time, the list is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, you have Andrew Luck on the list.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray is number 4. Those are the highest scoring fantasy football quarterbacks of all time. Kyler Murray's up there. He's a top 5 guy all time. Fantasy football points per game. It is what it is. He's been hurt. This year is the bounce back for Kyler Murray. Quite honestly, I don't know if they'll give it to him, but should probably be the comeback player of the year at the end of the year. I mean, coming back off the ACL tear, and then this year, I think can give you offensive player of the year running, comeback player of the year. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking about Kyler Murray because I've talked about him too much this offseason. I want to talk about some of the other assets here because you do have this running back position. Trey Benson is being drafted significantly higher than James Conner is, but I think we all expect James Conner to be the bell cow for the Cardinals here in 2024. Am I alone in that sentiment, or do you think that James Conner is going to see a massive workload this year as long as he's healthy and on the field?
I think if James Conner loses ground in his workload, I think it'll be because of health. But I think they fully intend on going into the offseason, into the season, with James Conner being their starting running back. But time is ticking. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised where Trey Benson is ranked. But I don't think anybody should expect to see that production to justify his ranking early in the season, though.
Yeah, I think if you're drafting Trey Benson and you think that he's going to be, a massive difference maker this year outside of injury, that's probably not what's going to happen. To be honest, I think James Conner is, I mean, we talked about Kyler Murray being a value. I think James Conner might be a pretty solid value for contending rosters. If you're looking for a guy who can give you running back 1 numbers, high-end running back 2 numbers, and is in a good offense, James Conner's got rave reviews this offseason. Jonathan Gannon's been talking so much about how, they want to run the wheels off of James Conner, and quite frankly, they probably will run the wheels off of him. Like, if they do give him that heavy workload, James Conner does get banged up from time to time, and maybe that's where you bring in the argument for Trey Benson. But I think as long as he's healthy, he's on the field, he's going to be scoring a ton of fantasy football points. And last year, the splits when Kyler Murray was at quarterback and when Kyler Murray was not at quarterback, James Conner's yards per game went up, touchdown opportunities per game went up, receptions per game went up when Kyler Murray was on the football field. So Kyler Murray's healthy, James Conner's healthy. You got some good values here in Arizona.
Yeah. And that's exactly why they should be viewed as more than a 6.5 win team.
Yeah. And last, I guess, 2 smaller conversations. Trey McBride, we're viewing him as a top 3 tight end right now.
McBride again.
You are not a Trey McBride guy. I think Trey McBride, I mean, look at what he did down the stretch last year. He was pretty damn good. I'm confidently drafting him as a top 5 tight end. Are you confidently doing that, or are you not confidently drafting him as a top 5 guy?
I mean, it's not that I think he sucks or anything like that. I just feel like he's rated too high. Like it's like more of a pump the brakes situation. Especially with Marv on the team. Now it's like, okay, yeah, Trey McBride, you were getting all these targets and doing all these things when you were the guy as far as the receiver position. But now Marv is there, and Kyler Murray does force feed his top guy. That will be Marvin, not Trey McBride. So
fair enough. I just think for me, I always talk about my philosophy with tight end. And what's funny, I'm gonna pull a quote that you pulled in the last episode, because you said there's this guy in one of our leagues that has called you this running back guru.
Yeah.
I have been called the tight end guru. That is what I've been called in our leagues before. I find the breakout tight ends. That's just what I do. I think Trey McBride, man, my philosophy when you look at tight ends, you want to find guys that can be the number 2 receiving option. And yes, I understand Marvin Harrison Jr. is added to this offense. Can we both agree Trey McBride is clear cut number 2 receiving option in this offense?
Yeah.
He should see a lot of targets still. Second year, getting familiar with Kyler Murray. I know it's not his second year in the league. He was not a starter as a rookie. Last year was really kind of Trey McBride's first year being a starter.
Yeah.
I think he's fine. He's going to be good. I understand that there's risk. I don't even mind if you say, hey, look, I prefer, Laporta. I prefer Kincaid. I prefer a guy even like Brock Bowers. Like if you want to prefer those guys, fine. That's fine with me. But I think that we should be viewing Trey McBride as a top 5 guy. And I think he has the floor that you want. He's going to get the targets in a tight end premium. Now, the other conversation that I think should be had slightly, because if you play in a deeper league and you're trying to find some gems, there is a little bit of a question mark as to who can be relevant in this offense outside of the big names, right? We've talked about Marvin, we've talked about Trey, but you have Michael Wilson in this offense. You have Zay Jones in this offense, and you have Greg Dortch in this offense at the wide receiver position. I've talked a little bit this offseason about how I like taking the dart throw on Greg Dortch. I think he has a good opportunity in front of him. I know at times you have been a little bit of a fan of Michael Wilson. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're right.
So when it comes to this wide receiver room, who do you like, I guess, to kind of take that secondary wide receiver role? Do you like Michael Wilson more than anybody?
Yeah, I like Michael Wilson more than Greg Dortch as far as being able to be that second wide receiver. That's accurate.
What kind of if you're drafting Michael Wilson, I'm just going to pull up the ADP again so you can see it. But if you're drafting Michael Wilson, you're getting him as wide receiver 67. That's kind of drafting him as a bench player, hoping that he can find a way into your lineup. What's the ceiling for a guy like Michael Wilson?
Oh, ceiling for a guy like Michael Wilson, it's not going to be very high because he's going to be the third option on this team. You're hoping that he could just be a reliable flex guy. That's what you're hoping. I don't
Big
think
play
he's
kind
ever
of guy.
I don't think he's ever going to be a consistent wide receiver 3. Definitely probably not a wide receiver 2, but a guy that you could plug in as a flex depending on matchup or if a guy's on a bye week, stuff like that. That's his ceiling. But I think Greg Dortch's ceiling is a little bit lower than that. I think Greg Dortch is more like, because I've had Greg Dortch on multiple rosters. I think Greg Dortch is more of a like an emergency option.
Yeah, the only argument that I would make with you about Greg Dortch is the fact that he was doing that with Rondale Moore on this roster, and they've moved on from Rondale Moore. They traded away Rondale Moore, opening the door for Greg Dortch to be a full-time slot receiver in this offense. That would be my only argument for that. I don't mind either way. I do think that you can get Dortch cheaper. Obviously, we saw that in the ADP. What are you willing to, if you're trying to trade for Michael Wilson on a roster, what are you willing to give? Is he, worth a third-round pick? Are you sending a third-round pick to go get Michael Wilson?
Yeah. I think that's exactly what he's worth. In fact, I think that's what I've traded to get Michael. Not Michael Pittman. God, no. I wish I could get Michael Pittman for a third. Michael Wilson.
Fair enough.
I think that's fair enough right there.
All right, well, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are the next team here in this division. Last year, they were 9-8. They missed the playoffs. Projected 7.5 wins this year. So we're projecting a step back for the Seattle Seahawks. And there's a lot of change here, man. You move on from Pete Carroll. Now you have the former Ravens defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, who comes in to be the head coach. You have the University of Washington's offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, to come in and call the plays for this offense. No major additions. I mean, you're rolling out pretty much the same team. They traded for Sam Howell to be the backup to Geno Smith, but it's DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Kenneth Walker, and they re-signed their own Noah Fant to be a part of this offense. There is no change here. We're rolling out the same squad. How do you feel about 7.5? Do you think they do take that step back like Vegas is projecting, or do you think that they should go over the 7.5?
They're going to take a step back. And it's hard because it's like, why are they going to take a step back? Because, if the coaching could perform at a level to get them above that, it's just, okay, let me stop being nice. It's Geno Smith, man. It's a roundabout way of saying, I was about to say, come up with something like, oh yeah, the coaching could get Geno Smith to do this. Geno Smith, he had his amazing year, his amazing, performance. They wrote me off, but I didn't write back. But the reality is that Geno Smith is probably a low-end quarterback too. And in the NFL, that doesn't get you much more than 7 wins. So, and it's not like they have the Legion of Boom on defense that's going to hold the team up on defense. They still have some very good pieces on their offense. They have Kenneth Walker. They have JSN. They have an aging Tyler Lockett. They have DK Metcalf. They have so much on their offense, but it's just that it means nothing if you don't have that guy on the center that could consistently deliver that ball and actually get you a touchdown. So
it is a fair assessment to say, a team that is going to have the worst quarterback play in the division. I think we can all agree. Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, and Brock Purdy are better quarterbacks than Geno Smith. With that said, I think it's fair to say a team that's going to have the worst quarterback player should have the worst quarterback play in the division, should be in contention to finish last place in the division. With that said, I mentioned that they traded for Sam Howell. What is the probability chance, 10 being 100% chance that we see Sam Howell in 2024, and 1 being 0% chance that we see Sam Howell in 2024? What is the probability that Geno Smith gets benched for Sam Howell this year?
25%.
25%.
Yeah.
We could see 3 to 4 games out of Howell.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. If I'm not mistaken, this head coach has no history with Geno Smith, correct?
He's from the Ravens.
Yeah, and they bought in Sam Howell after he became the coach, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So, if they handpicked Sam Howell to be a guy on their team. Sam Howell had a ton of touchdowns last season. He also had a ton of mistakes.
Yes.
That was ultimately the problem. But sometimes, man, Geno was just incapable of scoring touchdowns. Just incapable. mobile. So, I mean, do you want a guy that can't score touchdowns, or do you want a guy who's going to give you, chicken salad with chickens, what? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I look at it. So I could definitely see Sam Howell having a 25% chance of making some.
It's interesting, man, because I know that the quarterback play for the last couple of years, it feels like they could have addressed it. I remember having a conversation, Shane in one of our leagues, he's a big Seahawks fan. I remember having the conversation this offseason where I was like, was it this offseason or last offseason? I can't remember. But basically it was like, yeah, Geno Smith is cool and all, story was fun. He ain't right back. They might be sending return to sender on that envelope though. Maybe you should look at, bringing another quarterback in just in case, even if it is a Michael Penix, and we wait and see. Now, obviously the opportunity didn't really present itself for Penix, but I do think that this is a team that unfortunately, 2023 and I mean 2024 and 2025 going into next offseason, maybe not the best draft to even be looking for your franchise quarterback, especially if you're not going to be like one of the worst teams. I don't expect them to be one of the worst teams. I don't expect them to be a good team. But that said, 7.5, I could see this being anywhere between a 7 and an 8 win team, 7 and a 9 win team. So I guess probability wise, I'll go with the over, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with Geno Smith. And I think I saw a leak. I don't know how much validity was to it. I need to research into it more. But there was something that I read the other day about them. It was Geno Smith himself. Geno posted on his Instagram last dance. So it was like almost like people were like, is this the last year of Geno Smith in Seattle? Like, are they already kind of planning on moving on from him, or what is going on? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But let's talk about the ADP options. You have some guys here, definitely some fantasy football relevant players. You have DK Metcalf as the wide receiver 20. Kenneth Walker is a top 10 guy. JSN, a top 25 guy. Zach Charbonnet, the running back 34. Geno, I have it as running back 31. He's the quarterback 31. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver 75. Sam Howell, QB 37. And Noah Fant, the tight end 27. So lots and lots of fantasy football options here. Players that we are comfortable with, and I feel like we don't need to talk too much about, is DK Metcalf, JSN, Kenneth Walker. Am I correct?
Correct.
Are we comfortable with Kenneth Walker as a top 10 guy?
Are we comfortable with Kenneth Walker as a top 10 guy? Yeah, we are. I know okay. It always feels like I'm hating on him and Breece Hall, but yeah, we're okay with Kenneth Walker as a top 10 guy.
And JSN, we have him as wide receiver 25. Big expectations from JSN last year. Didn't really happen. We're looking for a sophomore breakout from JSN, especially with Ryan Grubb calling the plays. How are you feeling about JSN going into year 2?
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think he's going to take a step forward. I mean, I think we said earlier in the offseason, he has to take a step forward. Like, this has to be the year that he overtakes Tyler Lockett, or there's going to be some serious buyer's remorse from a lot of people that play fantasy football. So he has to take a step up, man. He has to.
Yeah, I'm confident in him too. And actually at his current cost, I actually don't mind investing in JSN. There was a time there where I was a little bit worried about investing in JSN because he was being valued as like a top 12, top 15 guy. Now, as I mentioned, he's not in that range. He's more so like 25. We're talking about a trade tier here of wide receivers like Deebo Samuel, George Pickens, Rashee Rice, Brian Thomas Jr., Zay Flowers. Like, that's kind of the tier that we've bucketed JSN into. That feels good enough for me. I feel confident enough in the step forward this year that, when I'm deciding between JSN and Zay Flowers, I might lean JSN.
Yeah.
So don't feel too bad about him. You said what?
I said I don't have an argument with that one.
Fair. When it comes to the backup, Zach Charbonnet, I think we're all kind of past the shock of like, wow, Charbonnet was a second round pick. Are we just looking at him as a handcuff these days? Is the hype for Charbonnet over with, or are we still holding out hope?
You have to look at it. You have to look at him as a guy who values immensely increases when Kenneth Walker is hurt. And that's
are you getting out? Like, when he gets hurt, are you getting out and you're trying to sell high on Charbonnet, or are you holding?
It depends on how bad the injury is. If we're talking about, because the Seahawks, as far as what I know, if they plan to keep things the same, they're a team that's going to run the ball a lot. He has a guy from the Ravens, so they're going to run the ball a lot. Let's just say that. I mean,
that a lot of the talk this offseason has been about establishing the run, doing what they want to do. There's been a lot of positive coach speak, especially as of lately, about Kenneth Walker. So I think they are going to try and establish the run. I guess, you said on the severity of the injury. I mean, let's say, you get a midseason ACL tear from, Kenneth Walker or something like that. Obviously, We are not hoping that that happens. We don't wish injuries, but you have something like that, a major injury that happens to Kenneth Walker. He's done for the year. Are you using the opportunity to sell Zach Charbonnet, or do you think he has the talent to where he could make it a conversation where Charbonnet is in the conversation for RB1 going into year 2, or I guess the following year?
He's a hold for me for that season, and then potentially a trade in the offseason.
Fair. I think for me, I'm trying to trade immediately. If somebody thinks that they can get Charbonnet for the rest of the year and they're willing to give me a first-round pick for him, I'm out. I'm done.
Hold on, you didn't say a first-round pick.
You don't think you could get a first-round pick for a starting running back for the Seattle Seahawks?
No. I'm saying if you said a first-round pick, I would have definitely said I would trade him immediately.
Fair. I think if you can get a late first for him, I would do it. If you can move him for, I don't know. We're viewing Kenneth Walker as a top 10 guy. I would assume that Charbonnet, stepping into that role, we at least view him as a top 15 guy for the rest of the year.
Yeah,
that would be my thought. I'd move him above guys like Zamir White, who are top 20 guys.
Yeah, I would.
So
sure.
I don't know. It's interesting. Anything else? I guess for the Seahawks, for the most part, it's pretty clear cut and dry. We talked about Sam Howell. From a trade perspective, are you investing in Sam Howell at all, or if you have him, you have him. If you don't, you're not really looking for him?
Okay, perfect timing. Because I was actually thinking about stuff I was going to ask you after the stream. So this is a perfect time for this question. Would you move a guy like, let's say, Aiden O'Connell for Sam Howell?
I would rather have O'Connell because I feel like O'Connell will play more games than Howell will.
Okay.
But I think Howell's more talented than O'Connell.
Yeah, and Howell possibly has a chance to actually be a multiple season starter if they get rid of Geno. Maybe.
At the least, I think you can view Sam Howell as a potential bridge guy. Like we've seen guys like Darnold for the Vikings right now. Like how Darnold is going to get a year. Like I think Howell could give you a Darnold year. He could give you the Baker Mayfield where you get the 1 year prove it deal. Something like that.
Yeah, I can see it.
But Noah Fant, I've talked a lot about Noah Fant. I like him as a deep dart throw at the tight end position. We're talking really deep. Look at the ADP. He's a guy that's 242 players down the board. Tight end 27. The Ravens, we know how they like to use tight ends. This team comes over from the Raven. This coach comes over from the Ravens, and then you have kind of a very efficient pass heavy Washington Huskies influence. They've had one of the better passing offenses over the last couple of years under Ryan Grubb. Any excitement over Noah Fant or nah? No? All right.
I've never been a Fant guy. So even less so now.
I just feel like for me, I looked at the offense and I looked at the fact that, this coaching staff chose to re-sign him and bring him back, even though he was scheduled to hit, the open market. Maybe. Also, Will Disley leaves town, who's kind of been a pain in the butt. Colby Parkinson leaves town, kind of been a pain in the butt. Noah Fant's the only guy there. I don't know. I'm willing to take a dart throw. I am.
Has to be a hell of a dart.
I'm throwing that thing. But let's. I'm throwing that thing. Pause. But let's go to the Rams here. We do have a projected win total of 8.5 wins. Last year, 10 games was how many games that they won. They went 10-7. They go to the wild card. They lose in the wild card round to the Detroit Lions. Obviously hit on some players in Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua. Now this offseason, I just talked about Colby Parkinson. He gets added to this Rams team. Because Tyler Higbee is going to miss a good chunk of the year with the ACL tear. Jimmy Garoppolo, he comes in to play backup quarterback for Matthew Stafford. And they draft Blake Corum, the running back out of Michigan, in the 3rd round. So this is a Rams team projected 8.5 wins. Over or under?
I think they're going to win a division, so over.
I'm going over as well. I don't know if I'm saying they're winning the division. San Francisco's pretty stacked.
That's my bold take, man. It's my bold take.
But I'm going over. I think this is a team. They won 10 last year. I don't know why they can't do it again.
Yeah, me either. Who knows? I think it has a lot to do with maybe what they think Matthew Stafford's health is going to be or something. I don't know why they would pick them to take a step back.
My guess is that the step back is because of the retirement of Aaron Donald.
That's huge.
That's huge. Now the reality is they spent some very early draft picks on some very good pass rushers out of Florida State. So they are trying to refill that. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to fill the void of Aaron Donald. We're talking about a Hall of Famer, gold jacket type of guy. But, that's probably part of the reason. But for fantasy football, let me just say, if, the defense takes a little bit of a step back and Matthew Stafford has to start slinging it a little bit more, and you got a healthy Cooper Kupp and you got a healthy Puka Nacua, we might have some fantasy gold here in Los Angeles. Now, I want to talk about the ADPs because I don't want to get too excited. I've been talking a lot about Matthew Stafford as of late. We only got 5 guys in the top 250. So even though there's not a lot of a quantity, we have some high quality here. You have Puka Nacua as the wide receiver 7. Kyren Williams is the running back 8. Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 36. Stafford is the quarterback 27. And Blake Corum there as the running back 29. I mean, let's just talk about it. One of the things that people are going to want to hear, Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua. We're talking about 2 guys where odds that these guys hit were slim to none, and they both did. Puka Nacua, 5th round guy. Kyren Williams, a 5th round guy. We're talking about, we were talking about dart throws with Noah Fant. These guys were literal NFL dart throws, and they hit on both of them. Bullseyes. How are we feeling about both of these guys being top 10 in their positions? Worthy of that ranking or not worthy? Or if one of them is and one of them isn't, let me know. I mean, what are we feeling? And it's okay. The Puka hive and the Kyren hive, they're going to come out. They're going to be in full effect. Don't say whatever you feel, man. This is your truth. Speak your truth. Who cares what the haters say?
I mean, like I said, again, I'll repeat it. Got to see more from Puka. Got to see more from Puka. Got to see if Kyren can hold off Blake Corum. So, I mean, right now, considering the other talent that's around Puka Nacua, I don't know if should look at him as a top 10 guy. And Kyren, I definitely don't know if we should be looking at him as a top 10 guy, because I could see a scenario where he loses his job. So,
well, that's the scary part, right? Because I actually do really like Blake Corum. For the Puka conversation, let me just say, I do believe that Puka belongs in the top 10 conversation. I mean, after doing what he did, I think you can't not have him in this conversation. Whether you want to say that there's risk with that or not, I would agree there is risk with a guy like Puka Nacua. But at the same time, we're ranking guys in the top 10 like Malik Neighbors, who has risk as well. Very, very elite talent, but has risk. You can't have a top 10, I think, these days without Puka Nacua in it. I'm sorry. I've actually, I have been slow with my admiration for Puka Nacua, I guess, is the best way that I can say it. However, I did trade for Puka Nacua not too long ago in a Dynasty league, and I traded one of my beloveds, Brandon Aiyuk. I love Brandon Aiyuk. I traded Aiyuk plus to go get some Puka Nacua. I don't know, man. I think Puka belongs, and we'll see. Obviously, year 2, he needs to do it again. We want to see him do it again. But the opportunity is right in front of him. I think because of this, the argument with Kyren Williams is interesting. And it's much more interesting than the Puka Nacua argument, I think, because Puka is far less risky than a guy like Kyren. Kyren was absolutely dominant last year. You have Blake Corum there. Like I said, a very good running back. I like him, but the running back position is so fickle. There is so much change year in and year out. The top 10 that we have today, this time next year, that top 10 is going to look so different. It may not look that different at the wide receiver position. You'll probably still have the Justin Jeffersons and the Jamar Chase and the CeeDee Lamb, and those guys will still be in there. Can we confidently say that this time next year, Christian McCaffrey is in the top 10, Jonathan Taylor is in the top 10, Devon Achane is in the top 10? Can we confidently say that? I can't confidently say that.
We can't.
And because of that, I don't think I have any distaste for Kyren being in the top 10 because it changes so fluidly. I think you have to look at it from a year-by-year basis.
Yeah.
This year, can Kyren Williams be a top 10 running back? Absolutely. I think he can.
Yeah, he can.
There's risk. Am I investing in Kyren Williams at top 10 prices in Dynasty? No, I am not. No. In a redraft, in a best ball, I will take him this year. Dynasty, I am not. That he is one of those players where if you got him last year when he skyrocketed, you're more than welcome to hold him and see how long you can get this production out of him. You're more than welcome to sell him for a guy you think can give you more sustainable production over a longer period of time, a la a Travis Etienne, a Kenneth Walker, somebody you think can last a little bit longer. That said, what are we doing with Blake Corum? Are you investing in Blake Corum? Do you think Blake Corum is a good investment at this point? Or are you just kind of similar situation where, you had Kyren when he popped. If you have Blake when he pops, you have it. If not, whatever.
I would invest depending on what I would have to give up to get him.
Somebody wants a 2nd round pick from you today. You doing it?
If it's a late second, yeah.
A late second. So that means you would do it for a 3rd.
Absolutely.
I just think you had to draft him with a 2nd round pick this year. If somebody wants a 2nd, let's say it's a mid or an early 25 second next year. You doing it?
I would have a hard time doing that, considering that I may be able to get a comparable running back at that position.
I agree. Next year's class is good at the running back. I think that's really the only other conversation. We can talk about the Stafford and Kupp. Are both of these players values? I mean, look at the ADPs of these guys right now. You have Kupp as wide receiver 36, Stafford as quarterback 27. I mean, Stafford finished the year last year with 5 top 12 finishes in a row at the quarterback position week by week by week. This is a guy who can really give you QB1 numbers, especially in an offense with this many talented options. A good value right now in Dynasty. Are you investing in Matthew Stafford if you're a contender?
That's a really good value. That's a really good value. And I would, we've actually were talking about Stafford before the stream. I would invest in Stafford. Yeah, especially at that price.
I don't know if there's many other quarterbacks in Dynasty that are better buys for contenders than Matthew Stafford is. I just look at the tier of players that he's going around right now. You have Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson. Like, I think Stafford has a higher ceiling than all of those guys. The only other guy that I think even has a similar ceiling would be a guy like Kirk Cousins, and you know the offense that they have there in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But I think Cousins and Stafford are the single two best veteran buys for contending rosters this year. If you're looking for a QB3 in your super flex, maybe you need a QB2, but you don't have a lot of assets to give up. I think you can plug Stafford in as your QB2 in a super flex the entire year and feel comfortable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then Kupp, do we feel the same way? Do you think we still does Kupp still have it? Is the question, I guess.
If you're fortunate enough to have Kupp as like your third wide receiver, you're in a very good position.
Do you think he can give you a top 25 year again?
Yes. As long as Matthew Stafford is the quarterback and Kupp is healthy, yeah.
I agree too. I think a good veteran buy as well. But again, we're talking about veteran buys for contending rosters with Stafford and Kupp. Other than that, though, like I said, not a lot of options on this team fantasy-wise, but the options that you have are good options. Let's move on to the last team in this division, the San Francisco 49ers here. They are projected 11.5 wins. And I mean, you look at what they did last year and I guess over the last couple of years, this is a team that went to a Super Bowl. Now, unfortunately, they did not come away with the win. They lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. And in the offseason, there hasn't been a lot of moves. Now, there has been a lot of conversation. The conversation has been Brandon Aiyuk. As I've mentioned, we are recording this before you guys are seeing it. There has been no Brandon Aiyuk news up to this point. Brandon Aiyuk is currently a San Francisco 49er, and the last piece of news that we have seen is he is working on trying to get an extension with them, so we will see what happens here. But this offseason, they also spent a first-round draft pick on Ricky Pearsall out of the University of Florida, and they signed a backup quarterback in the Pastronaut Joshua Dobbs. This is the San Francisco 49ers team that is likely, favored to be one of the top 5 Super Bowl contenders again. How do you feel about this Niners team? I mean, I know you just said that you think that the Rams are going to win this division. Does that mean that the 11.5 wins for the San Francisco 49ers is too high, or do you think that this is a team that's still going to do that as well?
I think you have to keep them at 11.5 wins. Even though I did just say they're going to lose the division, that's an entirely different situation. Certain things will have to come to pass for that to happen. Brandon Aiyuk will have to get traded, and that will kind of like start the domino effect for that. But if everything stays the same, if Aiyuk doesn't get traded, if everything remains the course, Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, which I don't think is going to happen, then yes, I can see them winning 11.5 game. As it currently stands on this day, yes, they could get more than 11.5.
I said it in one of my other episodes because as I've mentioned, I've been recording a bunch of content ahead of time, so content keeps coming out as scheduled while I'm gone. And I said in one of my videos the other day, I did like a quarterback rankings video, and I think it was that video at least. All these videos are starting to blur together for me. That's how many videos I'm making every day. But I said I'm so sick of the caveat. If Brandon Aiyuk is a 49er, if Brandon Aiyuk is this and that, I'm so sick of it. I want the Brandon Aiyuk drama to be done. I want to know where Brandon Aiyuk is playing football this year and long term. I want to know how this is going to affect Brock Purdy. I want to know how it's going to affect if, he does go to a Pittsburgh Steelers team. How does that affect George Pickens? I'm sick of the unknown. We are, at this time, you and I are recording this. We are 2 weeks away from the season starting. I need to know, Brandon, what are we doing here? Like, let's just get this figured out. I'm done. I don't want the uncertainty anymore.
I need to know so I can move him to this guy that has every 49er on his team for Puka Nacua. That's what I need to do. So
fair enough. Well, as I mentioned, there's a lot of ADP options. The 11.5, I'm going the over. I think this is the team that's going to win the division. They're my pick. Superflex, keep trade cut, top 250. You have Christian McCaffrey as the running back 4. Brock Purdy is the quarterback 14. Aiyuk, Deebo, George Kittle, Ricky Pearsall, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason. Now, I think we can leave the Brandon Aiyuk conversation here. You and I both believe, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but you and I both believe that Brandon Aiyuk is the most talented wide receiver on this team and is the wide receiver you want to own for Dynasty Fantasy Football in San Francisco if he is here.
Yes.
So that being said, if Aiyuk is a San Francisco 49er, he is the best asset long-term to probably roster here.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't really need to have any more conversations. Obviously, if he gets traded, we will address that on a future episode. CMC is the running back 4. This is one of the most interesting debates, I think, in Dynasty right now because the production of Christian McCaffrey is unmatched. We're talking about a running back that you can play in your running back slot that scores more than quarterbacks in Superflex. But the bill of health hasn't necessarily been great over the course of his career. He is also 28 years old, and there's a lot of mileage on the legs. Running back 4, it feels very much like dynasty managers in general are in a spot where we know we should probably be selling Christian McCaffrey soon if we want to get out on top. But I don't want to miss those points. So if you have Christian McCaffrey on your roster, what are we doing? What do we do?
I'm only moving him under certain conditions. I'm not just going out and just trying to trade him, especially like if I'm a contender. But there are concerns, and I feel like the concerns have been present for years. I have major concerns about his health. And that's kind of why, like, just to get into it, why I said, okay, I can see the Rams winning the division. The scenario where that happens really comes down to Christian McCaffrey getting hurt. Christian McCaffrey accounts for so much of that offense. Because they have him, it makes them go from a very good team to a special Super Bowl contending team. That's what Christian McCaffrey does for the offense, and that's why they acquired Christian McCaffrey from Carolina. If you take him out of the equation, you're just there'll still be a good team. There'll still be a playoff team. It's just not a slam dunk that they'll win a division. Christian McCaffrey, I'm not going to bring up the Madden curse. I'm just not going to. But
it's out there.
There's other reasons besides him being on the cover of Madden that we should worry about McCaffrey. What about the fact that he's already banged up and we're not even into the season yet?
Yeah,
so
nursing the calf injury currently.
He's had so much usage early in his career, man. And like the 49ers have been so lucky that he's been able to stay healthy and be this productive since they've acquired him. But all good things must come to an end at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put this out there. I don't know if it's similar, but I made an argument early in the offseason for if you felt like it was time to move Christian McCaffrey, these would be the reasons why. And let me just remind everybody, again, I'm not saying that this is going to happen to Christian McCaffrey, but this time last year, we were drafting Austin Eckler as a top 5 running back. Austin Eckler was coming off of running back 1 and top performances at the running back position. And then what happened? Father Time comes in, says your time is done, Austin Eckler. Thank you for all the fantasy football points you provided for our lineups, but it is over. And it comes quickly, and it happens when you least expect it, and just when you think everything's all fun and it's a lock. I remember people drafting Austin Eckler in drafts talking about, I'm getting an elite running back 1 for the entire year. Like, this is bona fide. There's not many fantasy football players better than this. And then gone. The boogeyman takes Austin Eckler. Now, where's Austin Eckler in our rankings? He's like running back 40. He's like running back 40 in our rankings. We don't even view him as he's not even starting over Brian Robinson Jr. I'm not saying that Christian McCaffrey is going to have that happen. I'm just saying that this does happen with running back.
And it happens.
Yes, I remember there was a time when I was considering to myself, should I hold Dalvin Cook and go with one more year Dalvin Cook, or should I sell him now? I made the decision to hold him. Brody disappeared immediately. It was gone. Within 1 year, he's trying out for the Jets and getting cut midseason.
There's only been one guy who I wrote off like 3-4 years ago, and he's still going, and that's Derrick Henry. Yeah. 3-4 years ago, I said, okay, I'm done. I'm out. I'm done with him. And he's still going. I expect this season coming up to be one of his best seasons.
And now that you said that, this will be the year that the Fantasy Reaper comes and gets him. Because you didn't expect him to fall off. Now he does. That's just the way that this goes. I'm just being funny for the most part, but there is risk with Christian McCaffrey. The reason why I bring that up is because obviously if you have Christian McCaffrey on a team, you're most likely a contender. You're most likely trying to win a championship. And I'm not telling you that you have to sell him. In fact, if you are a contending roster, having Christian McCaffrey is going to give you a positional advantage. You take the risk and hold McCaffrey and see if he gives you another one of those big years. In the odd, random, weird scenario that you are not a contending roster, or you're on the fence and you don't know if you're a contending roster and you have Christian McCaffrey on your team, I would strongly consider the risk of holding a guy like CMC at this point in his career. Even though the points are going to be beautiful when they hit your lineup, I say consider the risk. That being said, let's bring up the conversation, because if there was a injury, there's currently a running back 2 battle behind CMC. You have Elijah Mitchell as the running back 66 in ADP right now. Jordan Mason is the running back 67. Seems like the community is flip-flopping. Also, not too far outside of the top 50, you have, or outside of the top 250, you have Isaac Guerrero. If you have to take a shot today on CMC's handcuff, who is it?
It's probably Elijah Mitchell, but I'm not confident about it because that guy's always hurt. In fact, the one who's most reliable out of those two is Jordan Mason. I just think Elijah Mitchell is more talented.
So if you have CMC and you want to handcuff him, are you having to take the approach of grab all of them?
Yes, especially because it's the 49ers. You never know which one of those guys are going to pop.
This is my problem is I feel like almost like if a CMC injury happens, it's probably going to be a committee anyways. They're probably not going to bell cow one of those guys.
Right.
So it's going to be tough to find that out. I guess if I have to pick, I also lean Elijah Mitchell right now, but Jordan Mason's been getting buzz in the preseason. He's been getting good coach speak by Kyle Shanahan, but I feel like we've seen this story before where, another San Francisco 49ers running back gets good coach speak and gets some buzz, and then the injury happens and they just hand the football to Elijah Mitchell. That's kind of just been the way that it is. So that said, there's one more conversation we should have here. Because you have the Brandon Aiyuk, the Deebo Samuel. We know those guys are good. George Kittle, we even know he's good. I don't think we really need to talk too much about George Kittle. He's going to be a tight end one for your roster for the next couple of seasons. Ricky Pearsall is a first-round wide receiver drafted by the Niners. What in the hell do you do with Ricky Pearsall in your Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues right now? Because I think people, even somebody in our own league, is asking the question, what is happening with Aiyuk? Because then I know how to operate with Pearsall. We know they spent a first-round pick. Let's go over both of these situations just for the sake of it. If Aiyuk is a San Francisco 49er long-term, he signs a contract extension with San Francisco, what does this mean for Ricky Pearsall?
He waits until Deebo Samuel is no longer a 49er.
How long do you think that is?
A couple more years.
2 years? 3 years?
Not 3. I don't see it being
2.
more past 3. Deebo, the way Deebo is used, it's not a thing where you should look at it as like a long-term sustainable thing. Plus, he's another one. Always has a lot of lower body injury. So I think that's something to consider. So while a lot of people thought, they drafted Ricky Pearsall because, Brandon Aiyuk is leaving, I think the reality is like you're probably looking at a scenario where it's more likely that Deebo is the one to leave, because the thing is, I heard way before all this Aiyuk drama got too out of control that Aiyuk was the one they wanted to keep and Deebo was the one that they would have preferred to let go if they had to let one of them go. It's just that it seems like the things Aiyuk is asking for is so outlandish and egregious that, they have no choice but to like look at it a certain way. So I think you have to wait until one or two of those guys are gone. And in this scenario where Aiyuk stays, Pearsall will have to wait until Deebo is gone pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it wasn't too long ago, earlier in the offseason when I was seeing, Brandon Deebo Samuel trade rumors about him potentially being traded this offseason. Yeah. And I also think what comes into play here sooner rather than later for the Niners, especially if an Aiyuk extension happens, is you look at the cap space in San Francisco, you look at how guys are being paid. George Kittle is making a lot of money. Christian McCaffrey is making a lot of money. Deebo Samuel is making a lot of money. In this scenario, Brandon Aiyuk will make more money than all of them because he wants to be paid handsomely. And then Brock Purdy is going to be due for a contract extension here very soon as well. Something has to give. And I think they just, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they just rework CMC's contract?
I'm not sure.
But I think Deebo's contract is going to become a problem if they extend Aiyuk. So Pearsall, yes. I do think he is eventually, whether it's with Deebo there or with Aiyuk there, Pearsall will be the number 2. You're going to have to wait. People spent second-round picks on him in their rookie drafts. If you're waiting, you throw him on the taxi and you just live with it? Or if somebody's willing to give you a second-round pick or a third-round pick for him right now, are you just going to get out and not wait?
Definitely not a third-round pick. I'm not out on him for a third.
If somebody gives you a 25 next year, are you willing to just cut your losses and move on?
It'd have to be pretty high in the second round.
I think I'd hold, but I think I'm holding Pearsall no matter what. Now the second situation, Aiyuk gets traded. How are we viewing Pearsall?
As a guy that could potentially contribute to your fantasy rosters this season.
Okay, I'm gonna name tiers of players, and you tell me if we should view Pearsall in that tier. Do we view Pearsall the way that we are currently viewing guys like Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey?
I mean, I guess so, but I look at Ladd McConkey in a different tier than Keon Coleman. Definitely in between McConkey and Coleman sounds about
What
right.
about Xavier Worthy?
No.
I mean, all of these guys were first round picks. Keep in mind, Pearsall's a first round pick. If Aiyuk's gone, the only reason why I bring this up is because Xavier Worthy and Lad McConkey, they're being valued in the community as top 30 wide receivers in Dynasty.
Yeah.
You look at the ADP of Pearsall, he is not there. He is wide receiver 46. He is quite further down the board. I want to say he's like 4 rounds of ADP lower than those guys, even though he got the same draft capital and the same, type of evaluation from NFL scouts. Now, if he does go, I think we see a significant skyrocket in Pearsall's value. I just think there's a reason you hold Pearsall. To me, it feels like a lot, and I'll let you get back to what you wanted to say, but it feels a lot to me like people are nervous about holding Pearsall. To me, it feels like you drafted him knowing that Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel were on this team. So you either are going to have his value increase or stay the same as you expected it to be. There is no loss here of holding Ricky Pearsall.
The difference between Ricky Pearsall and the guys that you named, Keon Coleman, Josh Allen, Xavier Worthy, Patrick Mahomes, Lad McConkey, Justin Herbert. Then you have Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall. So I'm not saying Bird. I like Brock Purdy. We all know I like Brock Purdy, but the other guys are higher up because they also have very strong and dynamic quarterbacks. So, but I get what you're saying. I think from my perspective, I feel like they the reason why they drafted Pearsall with Aiyuk and Deebo on the team is because they know they're going to lose one of those guys no matter what.
It's future insurance.
Yeah, they know it's going to happen. It's inevitable that one of those guys are on the 49er.
Fair. All right. Well, you brought up Purdy. I'll touch on this shortly because we are about at the hour mark. Brock Purdy, he's taken this team to 2 Super Bowls now. He's played in 2 Super Bowls. Right? I'm remembering that correctly? It's been Purdy twice, right? That rookie season, he went to a Super Bowl.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he's been to 2 Super Bowls now with the Niners. He's going to be due for a contract extension here very shortly. People still stamp Brock Purdy as this miracle child.
Lucky guy, yeah.
Lucky guy. This isn't going to last. What's the probability chance that San Francisco 49ers pay him handsomely to be their franchise quarterback?
100%. And the reason I say that is because Tom Brady's first few seasons, they said the same thing about him. People didn't just flip a switch and then Tom Brady was Tom Brady. Like, he kind of was looked at as a lucky guy for a little bit too. So people are going to reference that when they think about contract, because what's worse than giving Purdy this huge contract to overpaying him is not paying him and you didn't keep Tom Brady. Like, that's just the reality of it. Am I right or am I wrong? Who wants to be the franchise that decided that they didn't want to pay Tom Brady? And I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but right now the proof is in the pudding. The guy's been to 2 Super Bowls and the guy's numbers I think they have to pay him. They don't have a choice.
I agree. I mean, and I just look at the quarterback market. This offseason, you have guys like Tua Tagovailoa who got $212 million. Guys like Jordan Love who got $220 million. Even like Deshaun Watson after his scandal, they got $230 million. Jalen Hurts got $255 million after going to 1 Super Bowl. There's a real chance here, folks, that Brock Purdy gets paid $250+ million, probably ending up as a top 5, top 6, top 7 paid quarterback in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers. And we're still talking about him as this miracle child. Oh, it's not going to last, yada, yada, yada. It could have been Trey Lance. No, guys, it is Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy is here to stay. There is really no situation here. I would almost put it at a 0% chance, 0.1% chance that the Niners even allow Brock Purdy to move on. He is their franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, if that sentiment is following itself into your leagues where, for example, you see right here, Brock Purdy is QB 14. If people are discounting Brock Purdy in Dynasty because they are nervous about him for whatever reason, I'm telling you here right now, make sure you invest in Purdy before he gets the contract, because then when people see that he gets that big contract that is coming, the price of brick will go up. People will say, oh shit, Brock Purdy is here to stay. Brock Purdy is a franchise. Yes, it's going to happen.
I was one of the main guys pounding the table for Brock Purdy last season, wasn't I?
You got
people
him.
were right.
You got him off of me in a dynasty league his rookie year for a
Yeah.
2nd round pick.
Yeah, you redoing that trade?
Hell no. You got me. You got me.
One
Now,
of the rare times that I've ever gotten you.
in all fairness, I got lucky in itself. I picked Brock Purdy up off the waiver wire in that league. I think I spent like $10 fab and I got him in the preseason. And I sold out for a 2nd round pick on a roster that had like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, like a bunch of really good quarterbacks. I was like, he's an extra guy. Let me get out. I should have held, because even to this day, I would rather have Brock Purdy on my team than Kirk Cousins. I'd rather have Brock Purdy on my team than, some of the other quarterbacks that I had. I think I drafted Bryce Young, 2 years later. Rather have Brock Purdy. So maybe I shouldn't have sold. But that is it, man. That is the conversation for today. NFC West, that wraps up the divisional breakdowns. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these. They take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of work. We appreciate you guys watching as always. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Join the Discord, because the season is right around the corner. As I mentioned in the last episode, we have just done our home league draft, meaning that really it is right here, because we wait till last second almost always to do that draft so we can avoid the injuries, as I hope you guys are doing in your home leagues. But that said, man, join the Discord, helping you guys try and win some championships this year. War, where can they find you at?
You can find me over on the Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling, where we talk about AEW, we talk about WWE. We try to do it weekly. We try, but sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But we always gonna have something for you on the channel every week, whether it's a short or it's a long form video. Just come check us out. Crimson Mask Pro Wrestling with an attitude.
Hell yeah, man. All right, guys, that is it. You guys will be happy to hear, and War, I'm sure you might even be a little bit excited to hear as well. The next episode of Let's Talk Dynasty, as I mentioned, we've been knocking out all of these divisional breakdowns, but the next episode is a Dynasty trade show. So we are going to go back to the Dynasty trade show every other week. The people have been asking me for it. They said, hey, when's the next trade show? I want to make sure that my trades are submitted. We are doing a trade show next week. So if you are watching this right now, get in the Discord, submit your trades, because next week, Dynasty trade show. But that being said, nothing else for you guys today. So we'll see you on the next one. Till then, peace out.